Hey there, and welcome to User Friendly AV. My name is Kate Adkins. I am User Experience Engineering Manager for Root Integrated Systems. And today I am at Infocom. As you can probably see, we're recording here in the Starin Midwich Group AV on Air booth, and I just want to say special thanks to Starin and Chris Netto for helping make this happen. And today I have a special guest with me, my good friend Emily Eicher. Emily, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, so my name's Emily Eicher. I am Ecosystem Product Manager for Q-Sys. So my role is maintaining and working on the development of our plugins with our technology partners and also strategic plugins, things like that. So managing that roadmap and plugins as a product.
Awesome. And we know each other because we worked together for a while.
Yep.
And one of the things that I think the two of us share a mutual passion for is automation, right?
Yep.
So we talk about UX and UI. I've been talking about on this channel. I talk about a lot about UI.
Yep.
But UI doesn't always have to be something physical that you see in front of you, right? Sometimes the room itself is the user interface, right?
Yep.
And that's where automation comes to play. So what are the kind of things that you think about when you're approaching a system like that?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think about a lot is how we kind of elevate experiences for customers. So, gone are the days of plugging in a VGA cable and dealing with a bunch of, stuff on a table and having to kind of, every time you come into a meeting room, you're trying to figure things out. You're pressing the button, it's not doing the thing that it should be doing. The thing that I think about a lot is, really making those elevated experiences that allow users to come into that room and, everything's basically done for them. They, if there is a user interface on a touch panel, it's intuitive, and then everything else is reacting to what they're using the room for. So if it's a conferencing application, doing things like, okay, when I start the meeting, I'm going to set the lights to a preset. I'm going to put the shades down for privacy, something like that. And, it just creates that next level user experience for people when they use the rooms. And, people are looking for that because they have, really nice user interfaces on their phones, and they expect, things to work. And as we're getting into more AI and we're getting into more self-driving vehicles, things like that, we really need to be thinking about that as an industry and, providing ways to do that in an elegant way. It's really important. And it's something that we should continue to push towards and continue to make a priority, because that's what makes those high impact spaces really great for our customers. And yeah.
Yeah, it's creating the magic, right?
Yep.
That's why I like to say, like, we're wizards,
Mm-hmm.
We make things come to life around you, and that's why we got the cool job, right?
Yep.
So what are like some of the, well, you were mentioning AI, right? So what are kind of some of the things that you're seeing in terms of that in the industry? I've noticed, walking around the show floor, everybody's like got AI something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a big buzzword.
Yeah. Well, there's obvious things like, camera tracking, things like that. We just announced our plan to acquire a company called Sear Vision, and this is Q-Sys has announced that. And so, things like that, camera vision, things like that are really coming up, and not just in the AV industry, obviously. This is kind of being led by the overall technology industry, and we're just trying to keep up, obviously, as an industry. Things like that, but also, sensor data, let's take data in, and then let's, determine how a room should function based on maybe it's the user, maybe it's how many people are in the room, things like that. And, taking in data and then building data sets to react to, different certain scenarios, so that at the end of the day, maybe at some point, we're not having to necessarily make those decisions for people, but their decisions are being made based on their, frequency of use or how they usually use the room.
Yeah, taking the existing data points, which is, I think, something that we don't do enough of in AV, is really making use of what we have cameras that will track, how many people are in the room, and give you that kind of information, and really taking that and figuring out how to predict behavior, right? And
Yeah.
and make it more intuitive, because now somebody doesn't have to go up and touch it because the room's smart enough to
Right.
know that for them. I was actually in a session yesterday. It was talking about AI and algorithms and stuff, and one of the things was it's not always AI. Sometimes it's IA, so it's intelligent automation, right?
Yep.
So it might not be like learning exactly, but it's taking those data sets and it's based on rules, right, that we've set. When the data meets these rules, do this thing.
Yep.
I think that's something that's really powerful that we can definitely be adding in now. We don't
Yeah.
even have to wait for all of these cool technologies to come out.
Yeah, I made a joke the other day that, a lot of the things that kind of right now seem like AI, I made a joke that the acronym can actually be actual intelligence
There you go.
because there's actual people behind this right now, right? Like we're taking all this information in and we're determining different things. Obviously, artificial intelligence is super important, totally gonna be a really good tool. But right now, we're creating this magic by coming up with these scenarios, and making sure that we can, make the magic.
Right.
So I think it's not all AI. I think right now we're also doing it ourselves. But wouldn't it be nice if we could have the AI learn
Yeah.
learn from us?
Yeah.
So.
So you're involved pretty heavily with the plugin development,
Mhm.
obviously, at Q-Sys. Is there anything that you are seeing, like a trend of what people are looking for to get those experiences? Like what kind of data are people looking to pull out of these different products that you're working with?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, sensor information is really important. So, a very simple way to demo Q-Sys and plugins really is I always show, we have an occupancy sensor plugin, and I'll basically take a control pin into, display, and some, a lighting plugin, and, boom, people understand like right away, like, oh wow, so when someone walks in the room, it's going to automatically turn the display on and turn the lights on, and when they walk out, it's so simple, right? But it's very basic things like that, that we're just continuously trying to make sure we have plugins for, and yeah, I feel like that's a big thing, and then also, at some point we hope to get to a point where we're able to aggregate those things and provide a ways to view that data so that our customers can use that to make the experience better in the long run, for their users.
Awesome. Yeah, I found that it's often the little details of things, right, that make such a huge impact. I mean, something as simple as, I changed the LED color on that microphone that's on the ceiling.
Yeah.
To let people know that, you're in a call, you're not in a call, you're
Yep.
muted, you're not muted. All those little things
Mhm.
are great details, and they all got together. You might not think people even notice it
Right.
until you get that service call one day that, like, hey, the mic's not white like
Right.
it usually is, or whatever. the
Yeah,
case
this
might
was
be.
actually helping me know what's happening.
Right.
One of the other things that I like to show with that little sensor is it actually does ambient light sensing as well, and temperature. But a couple years ago at InfoComm, we showed basically you just take your phone flashlight, you put it up to it, and then we would like lower the shades, things like that, where it's like you could in theory use that to automate the color of the lights in the room, so that if it's during the day, you got the sun shining in through the window or something like that, you could change the color of the lights so that therefore the camera looks better, things like that. Or maybe you're automatically setting the exposure on the camera based on the color, or the color temperature in the room. But what we're trying to do is just open the doors wide for people to do pretty much anything that they can imagine, and make sure that they don't have anything that's blocking them to do that. And that's what we do as programmers, right?
Yep.
We want to think of every scenario and make sure that we're at the end of the day not having to go back on site and
Yeah.
make it work anyways. So
We have to be a little bit of, like, psychologist or behavioralist, right? Like, you have to know a little bit about human behavior,
Yeah.
so you can try and predict that, right?
yep. And you learn that, if anyone's new to AV or new to programming, you really start to learn that because you get calls saying, hey, this doesn't work, or this doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
And it's something that you can study, and obviously podcasts like you have help with those things, but a lot of it is, learned experience and just kind of thinking ahead is a big thing with programming in general, and also obviously UX in general is just really, okay, I can't, as a programmer or someone who's used to the technology, who's building it, it's really hard for me to like think about every scenario that someone else might experience. But the more simple and intuitive we make things, the better it's going to be for people. Minimalism is usually the way to go as far as user experience goes, because this isn't very complicated. You see your apps. I click on the app, and it opens. It's not it's not rocket science. So
Right.
that's what people want.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, you're making that magic happen for people just around them, and like they don't have to think about it. And
Yep.
one of the things that I found is very helpful is because I'll sit and stare at something all day, and I have my background in is pulling in other people who don't have any kind of AV industry background or whatever. I'll drag my husband in,
Yep.
and I'll say, hey, like look at this. Does this make any sense to you whatsoever? Have somebody else do it. Is that something that you've done too?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually have a team. We do some internal development, things like that. Obviously, we develop Q-Sys, and every software development team at Q-Sys has a software quality assurance team. So I happen to be very fortunate to have 3 amazing people on my team, on the plugins team, and these are people who are extremely smart. They're engineers, but they don't necessarily know everything about the technology. We don't necessarily want them to know like everything, because we want them to look at it with fresh eyes. And that's a huge thing, and you can do that with peer reviews, with code reviews, but ultimately bringing someone in that's kind of like the layman to review everything pays off in ways you wouldn't even believe, because the stuff that they find, I'm not going to press that button necessarily after that thing, and then it causes this whole catalyst of effects. So it's a huge thing that we do. And we'll continue to do forever, because it's like really the only way to release solutions that hopefully are foolproof. As much as that sounds like a negative thing, that's what you want. You don't want somebody that doesn't understand things to just be able to come in and break the system. So,
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like that idea of user testing, right? So that's something that's big in like the web and app, mobile app development. If you go to like a standard, programming house that does that kind of thing, like they're probably doing usability testing and all that sort of thing.
Yep.
I don't think we really do that all that much in AV. I think we should.
Yeah.
I don't think it's usually, especially on the commercial side, we kind of tend to treat it as a trade, right?
Right.
And the carpenters and the plumbers probably aren't doing usability testing,
Right.
so it's
Like,
not something
how's
that gets
that
put
flush?
In, right? Yeah. So, but I think it is really important to have that. Even if it's just like that informal user testing, right? Having somebody come in and poke the buttons, or if there's no buttons, like I said, if the room itself is the interface, have somebody walk in and maybe it's a Teams room kit or a Zoom room kit or something, and that's your interface.
Yep.
And the rest of it's like a supporting, automation behind it. Have them come in and, does this make sense when you do this?
Yeah.
One of the things that I had once, I was doing a UI for a thing, and I had like a little slide out menu, and I had like a semi-transparent like background so that you had to pick from the menu.
Yeah.
And I noticed that like everybody kept tapping on the semi-transparent, right? Because they thought it was going to close the menu.
Right.
I hadn't thought of that, so I had an X button in the corner, and nobody was touching it. And they're like, why isn't this closing? Is this broken? And I'm like, no, I just didn't program it that way because I just didn't cross my mind.
You didn't program it so when they touch anywhere, it
Right.
closes.
Yep.
And and it's like, as these what's the word? These standards, evolve within UI UX in general and technology. People don't even realize that they're learning. They have like learned behaviors, and we have to like continuously adapt to that and be our own best users as well. Be out there looking at other technology. How does someone else do it? How can I replicate this and make it so that no matter what, this is a intuitive thing that will stand hopefully the test of time, at least for a few years, right? And then we can reintegrate the room. But it's hugely important to have those use cases and feedback. I think overall, doing sort of like blind tests, like you're saying, somebody comes in, you're just observing them touching the touch panel, and of course it can be nerve-wracking when someone's like
Yep.
doing stuff and they're just like button mashing and everything, but that's how you find problems.
Right.
Otherwise, you're going to end up having to come back on site anyways, and it's a process, and sometimes, it is an iterative process, but overall, sticking to, like I said, minimalist standards. There's a lot of standards, as you talk about, that can really help to get the job done faster.
Yeah, and I mean, if we rely, honestly, we can do let a lot of this heavy lifting be done by by the rest of the software industry. I mean,
Yep.
like you're talking about these standards. Apple has their standards, and they're freely available for anybody to go out, look and see what their standards are. Google does.
Yep.
There's all sorts of different ones out there, and we can definitely make use of that because they do have the usability testing crews, right? And they are
Mhm.
testing that stuff. So they are doing a lot of this work for us, and we can
Yeah.
make use of that. So
And
I think
they're
that's
doing a
really
lot of testing with, if people don't know, like eye tracking and stuff, seeing where do people's eyes go, what buttons are they pressing, what's the heat map of this user interface, or in our case there's not really much of a heat map for automation, or if the room's the UI, but there's a lot of research that goes into these things, and at the very least, we have to try to keep up.
Yep.
And do that because our users are going to want that, and otherwise they're gonna hate the systems. And that's like, the AV industry is done, or actually the world is done with crappy AV systems.
Yes, yes, agreed. Yeah, I think there's like two really key things, especially when we're talking about these automation systems where we don't maybe have a physical UI that somebody's looking at and seeing, and that's somebody just wants to come in and they just want to start their meeting and go. So making that as frictionless as possible, right?
Yeah.
So whatever you can do to take steps out of that to make that happen and make everything set for them. But they also want to get feedback, right? So they
Yeah.
want to know that the system knows what I want to do.
Yes.
And it's working on it, or if hopefully it goes fast enough that they're not waiting. But if they do have to wait,
Yeah.
they know that it's working on it. That they know that my camera has a light on it right now. That tells me my camera's working, right?
Yep.
The microphone maybe has a light on it if it's on the table or the ceiling or whatever, and it's the color that's going to make sense to me.
Yeah, it's
So
dynamic and
yeah,
adapting.
right?
Yeah.
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 So I
One of
think
the things that we try to focus on the plugin side is, as much as is possible with our third-party, devices that we're talking to, is doing real feedback. We send that command to do something, and then we wait to see that it was actually achieved and successful. Therefore, those things where it's like, when you're on site, you're programming a room, you're automating it, those things are already built into that plugin to make it very easy for you to give that user that feedback that they need, because otherwise, like, you have to fake it.
Yeah.
We don't want to fake feedback, right?
Right.
We want it to be as real as we can when we can. So
Yeah, I mean, because you're this sounds corny, but you're having a conversation with a user. You might not be there anymore, but you're still having a conversation in a way.
Yeah.
Like they're telling you something through an action or whatever, and then you're responding through the system. And having that two-way communication and that feedback, and you're not just like spitting out random stuff that makes no sense to people, right? So try to think of it as the conversation, I think, is really helpful too.
One of the other cool things that I've seen people do is tie into like access control systems. Talked to a colleague of mine, Josh Foster, about this, because he's looked into these things as well, and essentially making the room adaptive based on who that person is. So, in the case of higher ed, that professor comes in, they have their preset, they like the lights like this, they like the microphone, or, they need the microphone to be this loud, maybe the system adapts to that. And, using that persona and that person as a profile for the room is also another option to make it, that next step of dynamic for rooms that need it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. Well, we're coming up on time, and I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah,
And
no worries.
I'm so excited that you came to chat with me today, and that we got a chance to catch up. Like I said, we worked together in the past, so I haven't seen you for a while, and I was happy to catch up with you. And thank you so much for coming on. Any last words that you have?
Sure, yeah. You can, if you want to reach out to me, I'm on LinkedIn. It's Emily Eicher. Emily spelled the normal way, Eicher. Also, if you haven't already joined, we have Q-Sys communities for developers. Definitely recommend going on there. There's a lot of people sharing a lot of really cool stuff, and it's a great place to get help on programming, see really nice UI UX, and chat with Q-Sys people. I'm on there, so.
Yeah, and I do a recommendation, in every one of my episodes. So is that going to be your recommendation?
That's my recommendation. Anybody, whether you're a Q-Sys programmer or not, join communities. It's a great way to get connected with the industry, and I guarantee that it will make you want to do Q-Sys programming if you join. So
yeah, and I think to go along with that, my recommendation would be to just find a community of any kind. Obviously, in the AV industry in particular, but Q-Sys communities is a fantastic community to join. I'm on there. There's plenty of others. Twitter also has a lot of great AV people on it. You can find me on Twitter, code_Kate. Also, my YouTube channel has its own handle. That's user-friendly AV. That's all one word. But definitely go out and find your fellow nerds like us.
Yeah.
And communicate, and that's how we make it better as a whole. So you can learn a lot from everybody else out there. So definitely go check those out.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on here, Kate.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming. Like I said, you can find me on Twitter. Code_Kate is my personal handle, and then I also have at user-friendly AV. And then of course you can find my channel here on YouTube, user-friendly AV. I think this will be, maybe the fifth video. We'll see. I'll also have a video just recapping the show for everybody. So hope you check that out too. And thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Bye.